So the National Hockey League got very interesting over the last couple of weeks, and a lot of it thanks to the St. Louis Blues, who get their guys, as Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg are on their way to St. Louis. I am quite surprised at how this all went down. I am quite surprised that the Edmonton Oilers let both guys go. You have Broberg, $4.5 million contract. We said the other day, that's one you can pass on, right? Not without some stress because of what the potential is for the player, how the team is constantly pushing to try to get more defensemen. And so it's not an easy, just like, yeah. But it is difficult. And that price tag on a team that is going to be up against the cap does make it a little bit easier. Also, he has spent exactly 0% of his career as a $4.5 million player, right? So you can, I think, pretty easily, like, again, I say easily. It's not easy. Because this is, I think, a player who can be quite good. And there is absolutely a world where he is worth more than $4.5 million, even by next year. And so that is kind of the risk that you take. It's a tricky spot that the Blues put Edmonton in. I think more teams should do this exact sort of a thing. Maybe not on the upper echelon guys, unless you just fucking want them and want to give it a go. But I do think like making that sort of a push is a smart move to try to make. Also, I did make a mistake the other day. They can't trade him. I thought like, yeah, 4.5, you can use that as a cap filler thing, while also sending a young player off. It actually, in some ways, makes him more tradable. Well, you literally can't for a year, so that muddies the waters on it slightly. So overall, there's a world where you regret it. 100%, there's a world where you regret it, but I also think that this was the one that you could kind of explain away. I don't get the Holloway one. I think that this is a kid that is just scratching the surface on what he can be. And again, I've called a couple of his games. I've interviewed him a couple of times. I like the dude. He doesn't know who I am. Like, we're not friends or anything like that. But it's just like, chat with the guy a couple of times. You think he's dope. But just from a hockey watching standpoint, I think this is a good hockey player. And while there might not be an opportunity on the Oilers, given the additions that they have made, him at under $3 million is a no-brainer to me. He is the type of potential breakout player that could help this team out and get them over the finish line. Like, if he can reach the potential that he has and become not necessarily a game changer or anything like that, but become a very good scoring player, you add that to the depth of this group, and all of a sudden, like, maybe that is the difference between a game 6 and or a game 7 loss and a game 7 win, or not even having to get to a game 7 and winning one of the first 3 games that you play in the Stanley Cup final. Like, I think that this is a player that you not necessarily build around seems over dramatic. But this is the type of a player that you just don't let go for free, especially for $3 million. Like that felt very questionable to me from the Oilers standpoint. But this whole thing represents, I think, a bigger picture for Edmonton and a bigger frustration that fans probably should have and might already have. If these two are going to be worth a second and a third round pick to you now, they should not have been worth a first round pick to you then. And I'm not saying they shouldn't have been first round picks. I'm asking, what the fuck is Edmonton doing using them? With McDavid and Draisaitl on the team, you are in a window to push for a championship. Probably several. Start with one, but probably several. These are picks that should have been used as trade chips to help bolster the roster in those previous seasons. When you are making these pushes, the fact that they are drafting in the first round this much is mind-boggling to me. And like, even, okay, so if you're not going to trade that pick that year, well, now you have Holloway and now you have Broberg. And sometimes draft picks can be kind of like cars, like they lose 50% of their value once they drive off of the lot. Like, oh, well, we have a first round pick. Okay, well, let's trade that first round pick. Hey, that first round pick is Morgan Klimchuk. I don't know why Klimchuk's getting a drive-by in this, but you know what I mean? Hey, that first round pick's Morgan Klimchuk. Okay. Yeah, loses it a little bit. And so I understand, but with Holloway and with Broberg, there was, I think, and it might even still be a view that there is a potential upside there. So those again are absolutely trade chips that this team should have been using to bolster this roster and get them NHL ready. And I understand, like, what you want is a sustained program, right? Like you want kind of the Pittsburgh model feels a little whatever but I mean you're following it when you're the Oilers, and there is kind of a straight line comparison to, well, you got Crosby and then you got Malkin, and well, okay, well, you have McDavid and Draisaitl. That seems like it's almost too obvious. And when they started with Crosby, it was Guerin and Recchi and all those veteran players who were in there. And then as they kind of age out, and as Crosby salary increases, Malkin, Letang, all those guys start to get paid, then you start to need that second wave of younger players. And all of a sudden Gensel comes in and helps you win championships, and Rust and all of those guys. And it's the young group comes in. People do kind of forget there was a real big chunk there where Pittsburgh wasn't doing a damn thing. And that wasn't great. But you can kind of see what Edmonton is trying to go for, where we have all these top level guys. When we're going to be paying them, yes, we want to have some players on ELCs coming in and being able to contribute so that we can kind of just keep this line moving once these guys get paid. Well, in that case, then you don't give them away for a second and a third when one of them is going to be making more than $3 million. Like that, whatever. It is a misjudgment in development, misjudgment in scouting, or something, but something messed up. If you're using a first round pick on Dylan Holloway and then are okay with losing him rather inexpensively for second and third round picks, like it doesn't work like that. And so also along with that, I kind of got sidetracked there. You got to win one first with these guys. And I think every year where you're like, okay, well, conference finals, well, didn't work. And then other than that, and there's a second round, this and whatever. And this is, again, a weird conversation to be having after they just went to the Cup final, but it has probably taken too long to do that with Connor McDavid, sorry. And there's obviously a lot of very talented teams in the NHL. It's not supposed to be easy to get to the Stanley Cup final, but you do kind of get bored on third base when you get Connor McDavid, and are supposed to be able to build around it. And so these are assets, I think, that you have to use to stabilize or to solidify your team around Connor McDavid now. Let's not worry about 2 or 3 or 4 years down the line, because those cats could leave. And if they do, you're going to be dog shit anyway. And that's not a knock on Edmonton. That's everyone, right? Like Crosby, Malkin, Letang, and all those guys, even just as they've aged out, it's been tough to kind of keep that up. And so once they're gone, that team's going to be bad for a while. And so you kind of just accept that. Like it's tough to do like a 20-year run where you're all just kind of awesome. There's going to be some ebbs and flows, especially when you're relying on players like that. And so accept that, look, like this is our window now. We need to be going for it now. We have the best player in the world. Let's make a bit of a push for it, use these picks as capital and trades, or use these young players as capital and trades. And they've done that once with some of these picks, but you look at it, since drafting Bouchard in 2019, which finally worked out this year, but since drafting Bouchard in 18, they drafted Broberg, who's played 81 games, Holloway, who's played 89, Xavier Bargault, who you just did your guy's not playing, my guy's not playing, let's switch them and see if they play. Reed Schaefer, who was who was a piece of the Ekholm trade, so that's good. And now you have Sam O'Reilly in the first round. That is a gigantic waste of assets. You have had now, I guess that would be 6 years worth of assets, right? Broberg, Holloway, Bourgeau, sorry, Schaefer, and O'Reilly. So in 18, I think they traded one of those picks. Probably in the Ekholm trade. So you have 6 years worth of assets. You use 2 of them to make a trade that solidifies your roster. But then other than that, with all due respect to those guys, they have contributed none for the most part, to the winning and success. Holloway, bits and pieces here and there, and some big goals in the playoffs, but for the most part, he has not made a difference. And that just feels like a huge waste of assets when you are looking to make a push to be a Stanley Cup contending team. If you're going to be making those picks, you better be getting players who are going to help you or develop into that in quicker than 5 or 6 years. I am stunned how often this team has been drafting in the first round as of late. And again, to be fair, Schaefer has slipped as part of the Ekholm trade. But aside from that, from 6 years worth of draft picks, you have first round picks, I should say. You have 168 games played, 11 goals, a second, a third, Jake Chiasson, and now Sam O'Reilly, who, by the way, you gave up next year's first to get. It is top 10 protected, but that's not the point. How do you give up another trade chip right now to go get a player who isn't going to help you out for a few years? Sam O'Reilly ain't playing on the Edmonton Oilers next year. And the Edmonton Oilers' sole focus in life should be on winning a championship next year. And like farm system, cupboards, whatever, be fucked, man. You have to win a championship this year. And so again, to get basically nothing out of 6 years worth of first round draft picks, and then move another draft pick to get one that you use on something that isn't going to help you for 3 or 4 years, probably, is just a gigantic waste. And again, I hate talking about players like this, but it is a gigantic failure of asset management. And so you really do see, when you kind of look under the hood with the Edmonton Oilers, that last year's success was kind of more in spite of management than it was because of it. And Stan Bowman, I don't know if he should have that job. I have a fairly strong lean toward one side. You can probably guess that. But boy, the bar is not set high out in Edmonton for moves that should have been made. Like it is, and this isn't even like, I know Oilers fans and I have had some back and forths. That's what happens when you're the radio guy in Calgary, or a radio guy in Calgary. I shouldn't say I am far from the radio guy in Calgary. But when you are a radio guy in Calgary, you're going to have some back and forths on it. But this isn't oh, look at the Oilers. I'm saying, no, Oiler fans, you should be pissed about this too. I don't know why I'm so fired up, but you should be fired up about this too, because this sucks, man.